Hello, my name is John Long, 4-H Youth Development Specialist and 4-H Shooting Sports Coordinator. I want to talk to you today about teaching youth, also about teaching adults as well. We're going to switch to the presentation now, and we'll walk through it together. When we teach youth, we are afforded a unique opportunity to be that adult, an influential adult in that young person's life. We need to know that there are certain steps to teaching youth. We'll start by talking about ABC. ABC stands for ability, balance, and challenge. Here's a simple illustration of challenge versus ability. This X represents the youth's starting point. This X represents what we hope to be the teaching target. Anything that occurs from this X to this X is considered the zone of learning. Notice where the zone of learning is located. It's located somewhere between challenge and ability. Now let's look at what happens when it is not within the zone of learning. A challenge that is greater than the ability results in boredom and also frustration at times. Inversely, one's ability is greater than the challenge itself, the same thing occurs. Boredom. Perhaps even frustration there. So, how do we keep it in the middle, in this zone of learning? Well, it's important to use a stair-step method of teaching. We start off with a simple concept, build to a more complex problem. Then we continue into that area until the young person feels confident to proceed to the next step, which is another challenge. Once they've attained that goal, we keep them within that area of comfort. And then we keep going on and on and on and on, up to the teaching target. Now, what's important is to realize when a child is going out of the zone of learning and when they're staying within the zone of learning. If you're teaching a concept and it continues to increase in challenge before it levels out, then there's a good chance you're out of that zone of learning and you could result on the extremes of one of these axes. So, you have to look for keys to be aware of when that young person has been in that zone of comfort. There's nothing wrong if you see frustration or boredom growing somewhere in here right after you've leveled off that concept. There's nothing wrong with going back to that initial training. But we hope that we keep them going in an upward direction. Going back to a comfort zone does not mean digressing into an area of an inability to learn the concept. It just means that they may require more time in order to learn the concept. Obviously, some youth learn faster than others. How you deal with that depends on how you're going to address each one's ability to receive the challenge with their ability. TSI. T stands for what's occurring here. You're telling someone something. They're sitting down, you're communicating to them. That's telling someone something. Just like I am you right now. S stands for showing somebody something. I'm also doing that as well. I stands for involving someone, keeping them involved in the activity. So, what does that all mean? It's simple. Tell me, and I'll probably forget it. Show me, and I'll remember it. Involve me, and I'll understand it. It's always important to remember to keep your focus on the youth. I always ask people, how do you know if a young person has hit the target? The usual response is, well, it's obvious. They put a hole in the bullseye. That's not how you know if a child has hit the target. You can do simply by watching their face. Your emphasis should be on the youth. Once that energy has been released and it strikes that paper, it can't be taken back. We want our youth to excel, but first and foremost, we are educators. And we need to remember that. High scores may or may not reflect a positive learning environment. And that's also another thing to remember. Youth are interested in different things. They're doing different things. They have different abilities. We have to keep our focus on the youth and to recognize that. Know it, understand it, then react to it. So how do we keep our focus on the youth? Well, first of all, their world is not like ours. Okay? They may be things, there may be some things in common. But mostly, it's not anything that they're common with at all. You're an adult, they're a younger person. You can make a determination if it's raining outside, but for the most part, they live in a separate environment than you do. For example, they only know that Dallas is in Texas, and it wasn't ever a TV show. They don't understand that. And JR is just short for Junior. Cell phones have always been here. Most will have never seen a phone on a wall in a home. Also, have always had more than 2 TV channels, and they've never had to walk to the flat screen to change the channel or the antenna. Now, you may think these are comical, but they're very true. Everyone needs one of these. They need to keep it in one instance or another. You need to keep a youthful train of thought. You are not 12 anymore, but you need to try and understand what's going on in that 12-year-old's mind. How do you do this? Well, you do this by listening. You also do it by educating yourself on what thought processes a 12-year-old entails. I'll give you some examples, ages 5 to 11. I've learned that goldfish don't like Jell-O. That's what someone said at the age of 5. A 9-year-old was quoted as saying, I've learned that when I wave at people in the country, they stop what they're doing and wave back. Then an 11-year-old says, I've learned that girls sweat just as much as boys. So there's different learning environments. They're experiencing different things in their lives. Another important thing to remember is young people do not understand sarcasm. You can say things to a young person with no ill will or intention, and it can be something that brings them down just through sarcasm. It may work with your friends, but let's keep it out of the 4-H program. You have to do this. You have to put yourself into their shoes. You have to listen to what they're saying, what they're experiencing. Remember, you are the responsible, caring adult who is to provide a positive learning environment which is safe for that young person. TM stands for Teachable Moment. You have to be able to recognize when that teachable moment occurs. What the characteristics are of a teachable moment. How to set up a teachable moment? Well, you can do this by setting up a mystery at the beginning of the lesson. Now, doing this requires some forethought. For example, in the hunting discipline, when I set up the room, I have a table in the front of the room that is covered in camouflage cloth. I have all my items under that cloth that I'm going to be teaching for the day. So when that young person comes in the room, what's the first thing they see? They see the cloth. They know that something's under there, and they can't wait to see what we're going to learn for that day. So, keep an air of mystery at the beginning of the lesson. That serves two purposes. It keeps them engaged, and it keeps their brain cells stimulated. These critical thinking skills will develop when you allow them to exercise their mind. If you are telling them everything and not allowing them to answer, then they're not going to be able to exercise critical thinking skills. The development of those skills, or the ability of those skills, or the level of those skills will be determined by the age of that young person. And we have to allow young people to do this. It's kind of crass, but we have to allow them to screw up. We have to allow them to make mistakes. Now, notice the asterisk. This is to be done without compromising safety. Lifelong lessons, which I'm sure many of us can attest to, but lifelong lessons are lifelong, or considered such, because it involved us individually in the learning process. Sometimes you'll find a youth will not respond to your instruction if you keep telling them that they need to move their rifle to the left in order to get in the 10, or that they need to recite their bow. Depending on their receptibility, they may or may not listen to you. And sometimes it takes them missing the target or missing the bullseye several times in order to realize that they might need to make an adjustment. These type of learning processes are ingrained in a young person's mind. We want to make sure that this is how we leave them. We want them to have that mountaintop experiences. Yes, there are going to be valleys, but we always want them to leave a 4-H shooting sports event feeling like they're on top of the world. This is what brings young people back time and time again. We are to encourage them, we are to build them up and not tear them down. You can do this in a positive manner, through encouraging words, through great learning experiences, or you can bring them down by using discouraging words and ill-planned practices, events, and learning experiences. This is probably one step that's often overlooked, and that is debriefing. Debriefing your group to discuss what happened during that practice. What did you like? What did you not like? Why did you not like it? What did you learn? What was the most important part for you? And what life skills did you think that we learned today? This allows a young person to be engaged in the conversation. The student becomes part of the teaching as well as the learning process. They're engaged, they're active in the discussion, and they feel that their opinion is valued. Always remember, you can learn more by listening than you can by talking. This goes for the teacher as well as the student. I'd like to give special thanks to Jeff Goodwin, State Director of Colorado's 4-H, as the adaptation of this presentation, How to Teach Kids and Crusty Old Codgers, which was done in 2005.